This is an open conversation, so everything fits there. We're probably going to start with a little bit of a history here. Uttam, we crossed paths a number of times. In your last job, you had a similar job description at Google, where we both were, and now you're Qualcomm. So maybe let's start from that to see, how did you bring all this experience from Google into a company that is different, right? There's a lot of hardware involved, and what brought you there? What do you think has been kind of your natural path of developing your professional activities in the dev communities?
Now, happy to talk about it. One thing in common with actually all three of us, we all worked at Google.
All right, not at Google.
Yeah, so I think we share that in common across. So as you said, right, I spent 12 years at Google, and just earlier this year, joined Qualcomm, really to drive a lot of innovation. There were a couple of things that kind of triggered my shift, my change, right? Again, like at Google, I saw the mobile revolution, early days of Android and how it really transformed how applications get built. I was actually working in India where the movement was a lot more transformative, right? Like kind of leapfrog the whole PC thing. You went from like no device to mobile, and then 90% market share on Android. So how that whole ecosystem evolved and startups moved to US almost 10 years ago, actually 10 years ago, and then saw the cloud ecosystem, how it was evolving. And with the advent of AI, again, a lot of that foundational research happened at Google, be it the transformer architecture and things like that. The last couple of years was part of that, but really looking at that from a software perspective. So when Qualcomm reached out, okay, like with this AI revolution that's coming up, there's a lot of potential really from a hardware perspective. And I'm pretty sure as the panel progresses, we're going to talk about that as well, is because some of these inferences are expensive, and then doing those cloud calls at the time. So like the role that on-device can play, and then hybrid AI going forward. Also Qualcomm, we are really, and the company's humble, and then we know that, like the first steps we are taking, really going out, building developer community around some of our work, making sure that partners feel enabled. So kind of challenge that excited me, and that brought me here where I am.
Right. Jonathan, how about yourself? So maybe we can start from the current business. Golioth was that a player in that space, and maybe what brought you guys together, because I think it's part of one of the collaboration of Qualcomm, so I think is an example of your activity.
Yeah, like I love for you to share about your journey, and they used some of Qualcomm's early products and really burned their fingers when they were doing that. And I really appreciate that as well.
So great to be here. Jonathan from Golioth. Golioth is an IoT platform, and we help product creators build and connect their devices to the cloud and leverage the data that they generate. My journey starts all the way actually from my time at Google. I was, and my career has been all about developer platforms, and we acquired Nest while I was there. And I was excited by the opportunity. I joined Nest shortly after the acquisition. And I've been in the space between hardware, software, cloud, AI, mobile, basically all this stuff ever since, going on over a decade now. And really Golioth is taking the lessons from that time and actually several other companies I've been at to solve the real problems for developers. That's a unique take on IoT, and we can talk more about IoT and AI. I'm sure we will.
Awesome. So again, let me help frame a little bit of the conversation, but we're talking about development communities, in particular with AI. Now we have obviously the two camps. We have the closed camps, the closed developer camps of AI, where it's kind of funny that a company is called OpenAI is everything but open, different from how it's supposed to start. But then there's a whole lot of new open sources out there. So where Google's actually a big player, as is, we're talking about software now, obviously, as is Facebook and others, the Hugging Face, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So first of all, just to frame it, how do you see this movement overall? What gets you excited? What do you think about what's happening in the development community when it comes to AI and the use of AI models?
Sure. Maybe I'll take a little bit of a biased perspective around IoT, hardware, the physical world. what's really happening, a lot of the excitement that we see in the news around these big companies with big rounds and lots of investment is foundational technology, right? Large language models, foundational models, which is great and very important, just like the early days of the internet and racking servers and paying for fiber. But most of the innovation, most of the value of the internet has come from applications. And I think we're coming to the other side of that very, very quickly, a lot faster than the internet exploded. And same thing happened with mobile. And I think what we saw with the open innovation of the web is really what unlocked the capabilities. And we're seeing that now with open and open source when it comes to AI. All the applications, all the unique things that come from having AI everywhere and ubiquitous and available is being born from the open source side. And it's especially hard for hardware and AI integrations. Physical world, I worked in building management before. You can't just go to OpenAI and say, please help me manage my security system or improve my HVAC system. It has to come from products and product development, and you can't buy it, so then you have to build it. You can only build it on open source.
Yeah, and taking a little bit more like of historical view on this and then seeing how it's evolving actually from an AI perspective. So again, I had the opportunity to be at Google, really seeing how the company through multiple waves continue to invest on open source, right? Really being that foundational. And if you look at it in hindsight, the way it works out is actually if your open source projects and the contribution that you're doing end up being successful, you kind of end up creating platforms and standards that really a lot of others end up building on top of, right? That gives you one of those competitive advantages as a platform provider, as a company, that really is hard for anyone else to come in and overcome. But also it really leads to rapid innovation in terms of solutions coming out. And if you look at what's happening, you describe the two camps, right? Like closed ecosystems when some of these models are being developed in open ecosystem. Actually, look at how the models that Meta is putting out, they were not the first, but because they adopted this open source approach, they're actually very widely popular. Yes. And I think that's giving them that considerable advantage. So I think that's how it's going to play out. So building some of these large models and training them also requires a ton of investments. Yeah. That's where you'll probably see these large corporates really driving further ahead. But there's also a role for small models, right? Eventually at some point of time.
It's also, if I might say, is also a good way to try to catch up, right? So obviously, there are a number of companies that started later. Open sources is a good way to accelerate in good and bad.
And if your solution sticks, the community gets behind it, and you are able to build that momentum.
I think that actually fits well in why is Qualcomm doing this. So maybe you can describe what you're putting together and what you think is a vision there.
Yeah, so from Qualcomm's perspective, again, like Qualcomm is a technology company, like 30 plus years of history and really rooted in foundational technologies where it started, be it from early days of phone technology and then wireless and then really a lot of that hardware powers that literally powers a lot of Android smartphones. Almost all of the smartphones out there have a component of Qualcomm in it, right, in some shape or form. But with the advent of, and the company started investing in AI actually last several years. If you heard of CPUs, GPUs that go into those chips, NPU is another thing that Qualcomm has actually introduced in the Snapdragon chips. And the intent there is, it's a component that specializes in running those AI workloads. So if you have AI-specific workloads to run, NPU takes that load over, so your CPU and GPU are free to do other stuff that your device needs, right? So the company was investing in it way before ChatGPT came out and some of those things became mainstream. But the focus now is, as a lot of app developers and solutions start to get built around generative AI and AI more broadly, how can you really make people's life easier from privacy, from security, from really cost perspective as well, enable that on-device experience. So do you need to make calls to the cloud every single time when you need to run an inference, or a lot of that can happen on device? On device also gives you the level of privacy that probably many applications look for. So that's one of the primary use cases with which Qualcomm is really trying to put some of our products out. AI Hub is one of our products where you can actually get a number of pre-optimized models that run well on Snapdragon chips. I know you played around with AI Hub and get those solutions out in a matter of days. So that's one. Again, like we are in this long haul, right? And this AI wave that's coming up. the solutions will come from developers, builders, startups, and I think Qualcomm, we think we have a role to play in that wider ecosystem.
Awesome. So people that actually want to know a little bit more about this, I think is relatively new, right? As an effort to create really a global community that can actually experience some of the hardware and software and open source that you put out there for people to test. Where would they go? What's the suggestion?
So the best place to start, and I joined 6 months ago, and we have did a lot of our developer website documentation. So qualcomm.com/developers, that's a single place that you can go to really to start learning about what currently exists, the solutions that are coming out. We're going to start adding sections there that also talks about case studies and examples of what's coming. But if you want to bookmark one page for Qualcomm, qualcomm.com/developers, part of it at some point of time, hopefully we start doing activities and events, including here, fingers crossed, and you should also come and be part of those.
Jonathan, maybe the right time to go a little deeper of your business models and how you're using that community, as a business.
Yeah, so I mentioned Golioth, we're an IoT platform. Our customers are the product creators, the OEMs who are creating connected products, everything from drones to smart concrete to wildlife protection devices. And we're a software company. We don't sell hardware, and we don't make end product. And so the way we deliver our solution is through the hardware our customers are building. And working with our semiconductor partners very closely, we create a developer experience so they can get set up really, really quickly, sometimes in hours, to build up their proof of value. And then the cloud takes over, the connectivity, the security, et cetera. And there's this amazing, almost like cat and mouse game between hardware, software, and applications when it comes to building physical devices, physical products, building hardware. And oftentimes the hardware is years ahead to where the software is. And I think that's what Uttam was talking about. Qualcomm has been really early in the edge computing space, the connectivity space, the IoT space, and the software is catching up. And as we started collaborating earlier this year, we actually had a few use cases that was able to leverage some of their hardware, but there wasn't really good software for it yet. And so we did a pilot and a demonstration in a couple of key areas. And it's amazing. If you actually were to take, look at any of the analysts who track the IoT and edge computing hardware, there's a lot of Qualcomm chips. There's a lot of Qualcomm chips there, but it's really hard for developers to get brought up. Yeah. And it's companies like us that build developer experiences on top of their software, their hardware. That means that someone can actually go build a cost-effective, high-performance, secure IoT product very, very quickly, where it would be impossible just a few years ago. And so it's partnering with that, sort of getting the software and working with the application developers to really up-level the innovation. And yeah, we were pretty excited about what we've been able to do so far.
Because actually, there's always a kind of a open questions, a lot of open questions in the open source, how to make money, right? So it's not new, but still there are a number of models. So maybe let's go back to how do you make money?
Yeah, so we're a software company, SaaS and enterprise software.
License.
Usage-based platform. We do a lot of open source. A lot of our products are actually open source. And there's business reasons why it's open source, actually. Our users, our developers and engineers building products, they need to make sure that every piece of software that's going into their physical product, they can look at, they can audit, they can change. But our cloud product, which they're relying on equally as much as what's on their hardware, is something they don't want to or don't have the expertise to build and manage. And so that trade-off of the things that they care most about to be open source, it is open source, and the things that they care most to be a managed service is a nice balance for us. And it is increasingly harder and harder for companies who come up with a piece of technology and say, let's throw it out there and then figure out a cloud business on top of it, where companies like us find that balance of where's the value of the cloud, in particular because we're a cloud company. Let's have that value exchange versus create the community and quite frankly user experience through open source.
So Uttam, give us some examples of where you think, so like looking ahead and being optimistic, what do you think that this community can actually build using your tools, right? So a mix of a hardware, software, firmware. What do you think is the vision? What do you think would be an outcome that you would be very proud of?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of like step back and broader view around some of this. The rapid pace of innovation that's happening, especially with AI, like for example, the pace at which the context windows are becoming larger and larger, the pace at which both those large models are being published, but also those small models were like really optimized to run on smaller devices, form factors, etc. That pace of innovation is rapid. And what will happen if you combine that with the whole new advent of agentic flow that's coming up, right? And really, honestly, text to actions. And we have a company that we work with, Cephable, really enabling people who have some sort of a disability to really write codes using gesture, right? So this is taking it to the next level. It's not just an LLM writing code, but through your facial recognitions, you can prompt to get a code, debug it, give a thumbs up just through a smile, right? So really it's an excellent example of using the power of what Gen AI offers, and you will see more and more of this around you. Now the solutions will span across industries, from industrial setup, or like for example, like if you want to make sure that your factory floor is safe, these AI solutions will be living through cameras, etc., to make sure people have their hard hat on if they're operating on those factory floors.
So I don't know if you saw the program today, but like a couple of hours ago, we were talking about the construction and the use of tools and AI tools for AI. Obviously, safety is one of the key elements there.
And that's an area where, again, at Qualcomm, through some of our IoT products, very interested. So I'd actually love to connect with the company that's working in that space. But if you also look at healthcare, like suddenly a lot of diagnosis that probably would take a doctor or physician, like a lot of effort could be done a lot more seamlessly, all of your data, and you can really make intelligent inferences based on that, etc. So these solutions are going to come across, right? And the role that powerful hardware can play, complementing the advent of like how these models evolve and the software. So the solutions are out there. The way I think about it is like, we've lived through the internet revolution, we've lived through the mobile revolution. We are in this, and maybe people have heard this enough, but I think it's so important. We are in this early innings of what the AI solutions and around us are going to be. And the opportunity is for the new set of builders to come out and really disrupt, right? And create those solutions, and the role that Qualcomm can play as a platform provider.
Yeah. Jonathan, you want to complement that maybe with some examples of something is being built through your platform and your help?
Yeah. There's a little bit of also, the role of AI in general with building connected products. In fact, AI has been used by manufacturers, industrial IoT, healthcare for many years, for decades. But a lot of the advanced stuff that we are getting excited about in the consumer world is just starting to be feasible in the world of the physical world. And part of the problem is there's massive data sets that are available for consumer data, for books, etc. But there isn't for my company's specific compressor on my factory floor, or my company's specific computer vision for worker safety. And so a lot of the exciting development is actually enabling that, both on device and in the cloud, and also hybrid for these IoT and physical applications. So one example, we have a case study with a company called Phlox, and they do wildlife safety and prevention. And so I think they have a tagline where animals and humans can coexist. And their customers are railroads, big parks, because if you get wildlife enter these spaces, they can cause damage, or they can be injured or killed, and so they prevent that. And the problem they have is both an on-device problem. They actually have to near instantly deter the animals from the space so they don't get in harm's way. And they also have to train that data in the cloud so they can process it and refine their models. They're both doing edge AI and cloud AI. They have these drones that go out, and one of their products that we worked on with them that can detect a specific breed of elk and deter it a very specific way. And they have to do that within tens of milliseconds. Using computer vision, and then they use different things, lights and sounds. Every time they do that, they have to capture that information, send it over a cellular network, which if you've ever worked with cellular technology is increasingly complex, build a machine learning pipeline, create new models, and push that down to the device. I would say, before I started this company, that would have cost $5 million to build, and several years several years of experts. At Nest, we had 600 engineers working on some of the problems that Nest solved with AI. They built this in 3 months with Goliath. There's some of what I talked about, our platform, our capabilities, but there's also the ubiquity of some of this technology, the AI frameworks that allow them to run their AI models on the device, the AI training infrastructure they're able to leverage in the cloud, and then just better developer experiences on top of it. And I think this is a good example of what is possible today. It's not an outlier in terms of using AI and enabling developers to take these tools and do really the hardest version of it, and create the data they need to create their bespoke models for their industry and actually deploy a real product, which is pretty exciting.
That's cool. Uttam, out of practicality, so Qualcomm has a bunch of hardware, and obviously it's different layers. But to get this new hardware in the hands of early adopters, what are your plans, right? So obviously we're going to host hackathons and do similar things that are in the world of software, but with the complexity that is a piece of the hardware that needs to be in the hands of the developers. How are you planning to do this?
Yeah, and this is one of running DevRel at Google. Most of it was software focused. So as we are now doing a lot of this work now from a hardware perspective, that's one of the I wouldn't say a challenge, but one of the additional layers to keep in mind. Now, the good news is for people who want to get started, startups, developers, we do have some of these devices hosted in cloud. It at least lets you test the waters. Now the intent is through trusted partners, etc., over a period of time, make these devices more easily accessible. Like, so if there is a developer, there's a startup trying to build stuff. I know you were trying to get your hand on one of those devices, and Jonathan emails me, do you have something lying around? I was like, unfortunately not. Can you go and buy something? Unfortunately, but we want to improve that experience. So it's easier for people who are trying stuff to get their hands on. They feel comfortable, then it's easy for them to go ahead and buy it. And it may mean that in certain locations or hubs, we start seeding these, right? So that's part of some of our long-term opportunities.
Sounds like a plan. All right, so I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions before we finally wrap up. Any questions here from the audience? There was a fake hand raise.
So John, as an entrepreneur, then how do you put the value in your company when effectively what you're trying to do is, if you're using a lot of open source, I mean, where's the IP? You're effectively sort of putting 2 pieces together. But the long-term value, are you creating your own demise?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, IP, open source is a complex topic for any entrepreneur. So I'll tell you our story and how we think about it. The more open source we use, the more open standards and open technology use, it doesn't really devalue our product. What I found, I've worked in open source my entire career, is that open source, just because it's open, doesn't mean it's easy. And even if you're taking technology that's open source and making it accessible, that is a business. I think Red Hat really created that concept as a commercialization of taking Linux as an operating system and then creating a little bit more enterprise. But repeatedly over and over again, the value that a company can provide on top of, say, open technology is accessibility, is user experience. Just kind of like general statement. And because we're a service company, we're a SaaS company, our service is actually the main value. In addition to the experience that we create, under the covers, we're using a lot of open source in our cloud, but someone could go and piece those pieces together. It would take them 5 years and a couple rounds of VC funding to even catch up with the same starting point, but they would never be able to have the same exact experience. It requires insight from industry, from expertise. Now, on the open source stuff, the reason why we have open source for us is it's a commercial requirement. Like, our customers demand the software that they take from us that run on their device to be open source. But it also has no commercial value to us. It's actually a cost center for us, because it enables them to use our actual service, which is the cloud. And it's really, I think, in general, the framework of where are the things that people are either willing to pay for, so the build versus buy or build better together kind of mentality, but also where the most value you can create is. And for us, the software that runs on devices, we're creating value for our own brand and easing the integration. On the cloud side, it's all the actual hard parts for coming to build. The other thing that maybe is unique about us and our industry, we don't make any hardware, and we don't want to make any hardware. Well, my hardware engineers looking at this continue making hardware. We don't sell any commercial hardware because that would actually create a tension with our partners. So we work with folks like Qualcomm and some of their hardware design makers as well to do product acceleration. And so picking a clear lane of where your company starts and stops is like general startup business mentality, but it also makes us very true to ourselves. People come to us because we solve their cloud problems. We have all the partners, and we continue to partner with the best folks in the industry. But the moment we would step into maybe making something that would actually probably compete with one of our partners. So it's a tension all platforms have to deal with, and we say, let's be very clear and focused on where we start and stop, and make that part of our business and partner wherever else we can.
Thank you. That was very good, very clear. Yeah. Thank you.
Let me ask you one last question, and with that, just remove all your official heads at Qualcomm and what have you. What do you think the kind of the two comes medium terms, right? Of talking about here mostly on software because hardware as a kind of a layer of complexity. But do you think the open source AI will win over the closed source AI, or and since we're talking about these items, obviously there's a certain concern of the proper use of AI. So I mean, the ethical use of AI, I think that we haven't really discussed, but I think is embedded in some of these questions. So what where would you bet on in the next 5-6 years?
I'm happy to go first, and then maybe you should chime in as well. So again, this is just from my personal perspective. I'm a huge proponent of open source, right? So I think just from a developer mindshare, momentum, interest perspective, the tailwind will be behind what the open source models and the solutions are coming out. It doesn't mean that anything that is not open source, like those closed source model, will be out of the race now, but that momentum will be behind that. Now it also comes with a risk, right? Like, and we have seen that with other kinds of technology. Technology almost always is dual purpose. The same set of technology that can cause benefits can also be repurposed to do stuff that is, and with a theme, right? Like not really stuff that is ethical, right? And that risk kind of gets somewhat amplified when you are developing a lot of stuff in open source, putting out all the weights, all the models, because maybe one bad actor picks that, amplifies it, and deploys those. So it's a risk, right? And I think that's a risk a lot of people are thinking about.
I mean, this is honestly the official reason why OpenAI has decided to go closed, right? So we're too afraid that this technology can get in the wrong hands if it is too open.
And just from my perspective, I think the balance is important. You need to be aware of those risks, but there are a lot of advantages really to embrace open source. That's my perspective.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when Microsoft called Linux a cancer, and that mentality that corporations, and still, by the way, today there's open source, anti-open source companies and organizations that, private software could be better tested. If you open the code, that people could find vulnerabilities. But the opposite has been proven to be true many times over. And not to say I'm an open source zealot, but there's parts of the openness that has created the foundation of our society, like things like the internet. And what we keep on seeing is every major company, every successful business is running lots and lots of open source software because that's how they innovate. Even if they're building a proprietary product that customers are happy to pay for. So I think the key of open source is not that everything is free and you can take whatever you want from anyone at any time, but it allows us to share in innovation. And I think the role of AI models, AI data sets, AI infrastructure, all this entire ecosystem is going to have that same forces in order to be actually as successful as the internet and succeed that. The same goes true with the ethical side of it too. I try to avoid that because I don't know enough about ethics when it comes to software. But we saw, we see the same thing with the internet, right? The value in creation. The more and more that's created, right? I think about companies like Amazon, right? There's not an open source Amazon. There's not an open source AWS. There's not these massive companies that their entire product is open. And actually, if you follow the world of open source, there's a lot of challenges these infrastructure companies are struggling with. A lot of the database providers are changing their licensing. They're going back because that layer, it's actually really hard, to your question earlier, to have that open and make it competitive. But the value of the applications on top of it, that's clearly where the value is for customers and for our planet. And that's a nice, healthy balance, I think. Built on open source and creating commercial value on top.
Do I have time for one last question?
Okay, I was about to close, but I hit it.
No, I just wanted to know if you can help me imagine, let's say, a best case scenario where a bunch of companies get together and they build this open source AI. How would that look like? Like, would it be I don't know, many different AI models with different kinds of trainings, fine-tuned to the different companies? Or would it be one huge, large model with a lot of data? And how would it look like concretely?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So we're seeing at least one of them already. Facebook released their models and their open source Llama foundational models 3-4 years ago now. And if you look at a ton of the open source implementations, they're all based off of Meta's code, right? So one big company said, you know what, we're going to put all our resources against this. We're going to use it internally, but then we're going to open it up. And then you see this derivative, almost Cambrian explosion of AIs come from specifically Meta's investments. Also spurred on other companies to take that same concept and do something fundamentally different. But one big company. I don't know if we have examples of the latter, where consortiums folks come together as a consortium and invest resources. We do see this in software in general. A lot of IP is combined together to create open standards, standards bodies, and I believe that will happen too. It might actually happen like in what we see in the world of IoT, where a bunch of companies, competitors like Qualcomm and XP and other chip companies will get together and create a new wireless technology. Don't IP. I think that might happen as well, especially because they may not have the resources, the servers, the budget, like a Meta to do something like that, but together they can go and do that for an industry, for an application, for a sector. So.
Yeah, and again, from my perspective, a lot of no one knows, right? No one has the magic wand, but a lot of people are playing out the scenarios. So from my perspective, what will likely happen is Jonathan said, some of these models, and right on the center of gravity is with the model that Meta is putting out. So those end up being those open source foundational models. Now, a lot of developers around it will probably start taking things, build innovation around it, start building agents that are very good at doing a specific task. And then some point of time, these agents start to talk to each other. Because right now, if you go through a lot of LLM-based use cases, it's a human that prompts the first thing, and then actions happen from there. But agents starting to talk to each other and that whole infrastructure building, and then the role for a lot of quote-unquote hardware providers there is, how can you make hardware available that are running these loads at scale more efficiently? Now, no one knows what happens after that. Do agents develop their own language of talking to each other that humans don't know, and the scenario after that? But a lot of innovation will happen in that space, where you take a foundational open source model, build your use cases around it, build specific agents, and then likely follow from there. That's one of the scenarios. It can go in different ways.
One last point. How do you see the people excited here?
Yeah, we should have not delved into that last question that you had. So I went to college in early 2000s, and so I went to college in IIT, and artificial AI used to be a course there taught for more than 2 decades before that. It used to be a course in theory mostly because the compute wasn't there really to get some of these applications going. Now in the last few years, what has really happened, and this is capturing people's imagination, a lot of those concepts that existed in textbooks are really getting to play out, and it's thanks to actually compute, still expensive, but at least available for these LLMs, large language models, to be trained and deployed. So hardware has always been a constraint. Now what's happening is it's evolving at a faster pace, really enabling a lot of these applications to develop and put out. So I foresee hardware to be less and less of a constraint going forward. It's really going to be around the use cases that emerge, the applications that come out of it, and that the tension between, okay, like there's going to be some regulation at some point of time that starts to step in as well, right? And how do you develop these solutions in a safe way, deploy it at scale? Honestly, it's going to change a lot of way the society operates as well. Like the things that we take for granted today will probably not be the same 5 years from now. We are seeing glimpses of it even in this city, right, around us. So I think that's what's going to evolve. Hardware was a constraint historically. That's why it took so long. I think hardware is becoming less and less of a constraint, and it's going to change even more going forward.
Yeah, the plus one on the hardware not being the bottleneck for now. Maybe it'll be again the bottleneck in the future. Who knows? But the biggest innovations that we've been seeing is on the software side. So humans who've been working on algorithms for the last 20 years have multiple PhDs. They didn't have fast enough compute to even test it. Now it is, and so all of this evolution is basically making the software that they thought was possible actually possible. And even on things like edge AI and on-device AI, some of that's running on really old hardware because they figured out the tricks and the optimizations to make it run on older iPhones, on tiny edge computers. And so I think the reason why we're seeing so much discussion is not necessarily because in the last 5 years, the hardware has increased significantly. It's because the software and the developers have figured out how to use the hardware that we do have today. And whether or not we need things like quantum computing or next evolution of hardware, I don't think we've played that out yet. Like, there's still so much that we're seeing happen on today's technology that's mind-blowing.
And that might be that next inflection point when that happens, right?
And that might be the topic of next year. So thank you guys, appreciate it.